Happy Friday and welcome back to Financial Wellness Fridays. Last week we talked about the importance of budgeting and the 50-30-20 rule. So this week I thought it would be super fitting to show you guys how to make your own budget spreadsheet in Excel. A lot of people use apps like Mint in order to keep track of their budget, but I find that Excel is the best tool because you can customize it exactly to your budget. I find it a lot easier to keep track of my 50 and 30 and 20 expense categories through this budget. So if you're using a kind of pie chart budget like I use, I think Excel is a lot easier. So let's jump right in. The first thing that you're going to want to do is open a sheet in Excel. You can also use Google Sheets if you want, although I'm not really sure if the functions are the same, so hopefully you can follow along as well. So I'm going to put date, description, credit, debit, and then an amount remaining column. This is exactly how a check register is set up, so I think it's a really great way to keep track of the budget because it's going to show you those columns where you're debiting, where you're crediting, and also telling you what you spent that money on so you're not confused at the end of the month. But the most important thing is that it's going to tell you how much money you have left at the end of the month. The next thing that we're going to do is highlight columns A through F by clicking on them across the top and then right-clicking and selecting column width. We're going to change the column width to 20 just so that none of the headers are truncated and you can see the full header on the spreadsheet. And then we hit OK. So as you see, this widens our column. The next thing we're going to do is highlight A1 through E1, click the Merge and Center button, head on over to the cell styles and click the heading style. Then I'm going to change the font size so that it's a little bit bigger. And then the way that I like to title my budgets is month, year, and then the word budget. The next thing that we're going to do is add our starting amount line across the top so that we know where we're starting at in the beginning of the month. So I like to merge and center the first three columns and then type starting amount. And then I like to merge and center the next two columns and just type my starting amount in there. The next thing we're going to do is add some borders in. So I like to use the all borders so that it borders the entire thing. This is more just a style preference. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. Okay, now we're going to fill in a sample starting amount. So let's say we start off with $1,000 for the month. And then we're going to go ahead and format the rest of our cells so we can get started on adding in some formulas and making this budget work out. So the first thing that I'm going to do is highlight each of the cells in the date category, and then I'm going to head over to where it says general at the top and collect short date. What happens when you do this is when you type in something like March 1st, April 2nd, it's going to automatically put it into the month, day, year style so that it's a little bit easier to see. Next, I'm going to highlight the debit, credit, and amount remaining sections. I'm going to head on over to the general again and select the style currency, which is just going to make sure that it's in currency format. It's going to have a money sign and then 2 decimals behind it. And this just makes it a little bit easier when you're typing in those numbers so you don't have to worry about formatting. Next, we're going to get to the fun part of Excel, which is adding in a formula. So we're going to go over to the Formulas tab, click the Logic button, and then select the If formula. In this formula, you're going to say, if this cell has this value, and that statement is true, then this is going to happen. But if that statement is false, then this is going to happen. So for us, we're going to make it so that our formula will automatically subtract the debit column or add the credit column. So the first thing that you're going to do is type in your logic statement. So for this, it's going to be C4, which is the debit column, is greater than 0, signifying that there is an amount entered into C4. Obviously, if this is true, this means we made a debit. Next, we move down to the value if true column. So if C4 has a value in it, that means that we made a debit, which means that we want our starting amount to subtract that debit that we made to give us our amount remaining. So we're going to do the starting amount, which is in cell D2, minus the debit, which is in cell C4. So you're literally just going to type D2 minus C4. And that's automatically going to make that happen if there's a value in the debit section. In the value of false, we're going to type in a formula that will add on to the starting balance if there's not a value in the debit, which would imply that there's a value in the credit. It's going to be D2, the starting balance, plus D4, which is the credit column, and this is going to leave us with a credit. So now let's test it out. Let's type in $21.25 into the debit, saying we bought like gas or something. And as you can see, it automatically subtracts it from the starting amount. But if we do the opposite and add $21.25 in the credit column, then you can see it adds it onto the starting amount. So our formula is working. Next, we're going to add one more formula in, and this is just because we started off with the starting amount, but now we want to go from the balance above it, which is the now available balance. So the first box is going to be the same because we're still looking to see if there is a number in the debit column, but instead of doing C4, we're going to do C5 because we're down a row. So it's going to be C5 is greater than 0, which would signify that there is a number in the debit column. But instead of going off of the starting balance, we're going to move down to the available balance so that our spreadsheet continually subtracts and gives us an actual amount that we have left in our budget, so we can keep track of that when we go to spend something. D2, we're going to do E4, which is the available balance in the row above the one that we're working in right now, and then we're going to do minus C5, which is the debit. And then in the value if false, we're going to do E4 plus, because it's a credit, D5. And then we'll go ahead and click OK. And again, we can test this out. And so we're going to enter 21.25 again and make sure that it subtracts from the available balance instead of the starting balance. Now, what we're going to do is just go ahead and apply this formula to the rest of the available balance rows by going and hovering over that little corner box until you see the plus sign, and then just dragging down for the rest of your column. And it goes ahead and applies that formula to the rest of the spreadsheet. Now, what I like to do is go ahead and copy and paste that formula over to a new sheet so that I have one for every single month. So you're just going to highlight over it and hit the copy button, or you can do Command C or Control C depending on which computer you're on, and then go over to another spreadsheet that you've added on at the bottom, and then you're just going to hit, but this is super important, don't just do Control V, go up to the top on the left hand side and hit Paste with column widths, which means it's going to keep the same formatting that you've already worked so hard to create. And that's it. That's how you make a simple budget in Excel. You can go ahead and customize it however you want, changing the colors, changing the formatting, whatever you want, but that's how you enter the simple basic formulas that you need in a budget for Excel. I also like to create different budgets for my, again, expenses, wants, and savings. I like to keep track of how much my savings accounts are at. I like to make separate spreadsheets for each of my savings accounts, and you can go ahead and do this. It's super simple. Once you have the basic formula down, you can copy and paste as much as you want and separate it out as much as you want. If you guys have any questions, let me know down in the comments. Of course, drop a like on this video and hit subscribe, especially if you're looking forward to learning more about financial wellness. And join me next Friday for another video. Have a great one.